So, just like we did last time, I'm going to focus on, instead of trying to do something that I'm ill equipped to do, which is speak authoritatively on the whole subject of Ayurveda, which is a vast, vast topic that parallels in complexity and depth the tradition of Chinese medicine. But instead of trying to do that, I want to share some very particular pieces of what I personally have received from this tradition, and hopefully give you a little bit of the flavor, the sense of what this tradition is like from my perspective, and possibly can be like an introduction. I think about, I think one of the things about herbal medicine that is deeply healing is not just the physical substance that's present in an herb or a formula when you use it, but the relationship between yourself and the plants. So I have this habit that's not unique to me, but I have the habit of, when I encounter herbs as I'm out, walking. Many of them are herbs that most people call weeds, but I encounter them. I call them my plant friends, and I tell people in my life, like, oh, like look at this plant friend here, and it's about acknowledging the relationship between myself and the plant. And the more that I do that, the more that I speak that way, the more it does feel like that plant is my friend. And so just like you can have that experience with individual plants or with formulas, you can also come to have something of a relationship with a tradition or a perspective. So I want it to be like this is me introducing you a little bit to a friend who's been a good influence on my life. So just like anyone introducing you to their friend, I'm only going to be able to tell my experience. It's not the same as knowing that person or that tradition for yourself, but I hope it will be a good, warm introduction. So that's the intention. And I realized that I didn't turn off my cell phone, so I'm going to do that now because I would be quite embarrassed if it rang while we were talking. Okay. So I know we have at least one yoga teacher here, a person in yoga teacher training. How many of you have familiarity with South Asian culture, either through travel, through exposure to South Asian food, exposure to yoga? Tell me a little bit about what you have already experienced or sort of learned from encounters with the sister traditions of Ayurveda. Ayurvedic theory has implications for a lot of the traditional cuisine that comes out of Southeast Asia, just as traditional Thai medicine has influences on Thai cuisine. Tell me about other ways besides Ayurveda that maybe you have experienced something of this cultural milieu, and what you have learned in that exchange. One way to think about it would be to ask the question, how does it feel different if you are eating South Asian cuisine versus another cuisine? Or how does it feel different? What do you get that's different from studying or practicing Hatha yoga than you get from other movement practices that you do? While you're working on that, I'm going to share that the reason I'm asking this question is because this is very much the way that I was first introduced to Ayurveda. Long before I was an herbalist or had any sense that this was going to be my path, I was a theater artist. And after I graduated from college, the first thing that I did was to travel to India for a theater fellowship, to make original work there for a few months. And I had never been outside of the US, let alone by myself. And there's a very significant cultural difference there. And so apart from, all of the artistic experiences that I had, the people that I met, both Indian citizens and other travelers from around the world, I had a couple of really powerful experiences while that related to health and healing while I was there, even before this was sort of something that I was consciously pursuing as a path of study. And certainly part of this was eating food that was very different from the food that I grew up eating. And really having experiences, particularly when I was in South India. They serve a food, they serve a meal called a thali, which is like a plate with lots of smaller dishes of different kinds of things that have a particular balance to the flavors and the textures. And I really found that when I had a thali as a meal, yes, it was delicious, but there was a certain kind of balanced, like buzzy feel that I would have after eating that. A way that I would feel just really good, energized and yet calm. And I only later, after I had the experience, did I come to learn that part of Ayurvedic theory has to do with balancing the rasas or the tastes, and that this is not only about the way that you physically, in a culinary tradition, that you balance the salty, the astringent, the sour, and the sweet, the pungent. And in so doing, you balance the energies of the food and you balance the nutrition of the meal. But then you create this wonderful feeling in the person who eats the meal. It's not only about that, but there's also a metaphysical side, because it can be said that all of our experiences in life have a certain flavor to them. They have a certain phenomenological quality that we experience as something similar to the flavor of food. And that living and cultivating a healthy life and a fulfilled life is about bringing the flavors of our experience into the proper balance with each other. So again, we have this kind of uniting theory that brings both very down-to-earth, mundane physical experiences like eating a meal and cooking, to connect with very deep experiences like the nature of what it is like to live our lives and be a human, which we saw that in the Chinese tradition as well. So that was one of my first experiences. And then toward the end of my time in Kerala in South India, which is a place that many people travel to study Ayurveda and Ayurvedic massage and the Panchakarma, which is a series of 5 purifications of the body. There are lots and lots of places to go and have these experiences there. So my friend and I decided that we wanted to have a massage, and I was really looking forward to this. I loved massage, and actually I was a massage therapist at this point. I had gone through massage school and had done that in between, like in and among my undergraduate education. So I had that training, though I hadn't really practiced a lot because I was back in school. And so I was really looking forward to this. So we go to this healing center and say, okay, we're going to get this abhyanga, this oil massage. It's like, this area is very famous for. And I go into this tiny room, and there are like these vinyl mats on the floor, and it's dark. And the woman, the practitioner who's working on me, did not speak English, which was not uncommon for the women. Sometimes the women would speak a little bit of English. In the South, in Kerala, women have a very, very high rate of literacy and participation in society and in economic life, but are a little less likely to speak English than the men. And this particular woman did not speak English, so she sort of motions to me to, strip off all my clothes, which I do. And she proceeds to give me a massage that I have to say shocked me, utterly shocked me, because I came from this Western massage tradition where it's all about you've got to relax the person, and it's all about like calming you down and relaxing you. And this was anything but that experience. I felt like, I was being absolutely just covered in oil. I couldn't have imagined that it was possible to put this much oil on a person's body ever, up until that point in my life. And I think I said to my friend afterward, I felt like a dog being washed, like when you like scrub your dog and then like hose the dog down. I felt like that. Like I was very vigorous, and she's like, massaging like up and down my legs and around my crotch and then like around my breasts and like up at like all over everything. And after I got over the shock of being touched that way, the quality of the touch, the areas that were being touched that we wouldn't touch in the West. And it was not sexual in any way, far from it, but it wasn't quite what I was expecting. When I came out of that, the shock of it, again, I had this sense of being very energized and also calm and grounded. And these experiences were a big part of what set me up later when I started to read about and study Ayurveda. It gave me a context that I never had for Chinese medicine because I hadn't experienced the culture in such an immersive way, and I hadn't received those kinds of healing practices from people who were part of that cultural tradition before I studied it through words. And what this has helped me to experience, and I think it's also something that is really part of the character of Ayurveda, is that more than any other tradition that I have experienced, Ayurveda always comes back to the embodied experience, really comes back to the body. And this very fundamental question of what does the body need and what does it feel like in the body? Not necessarily because that's our end goal, but because there's an understanding, even this is very much present within Hatha Yoga, the series of physical postures, that if we want to get to the point where we can, meditate very deeply, where we could perhaps have a transcendent experience of going beyond the physical form, we can't do that by skipping over what the body has to teach us or skipping over the body's needs. We have to go through the body, and that is the path to ultimately getting beyond it. Not skipping over, as we have been tempted to do in the West ever since Descartes sort of said, I think, therefore I am, kind of splitting off all of the other bodily processes that are not connected to thought. As if those are not part of our being too. There's no such thing as that in the Ayurvedic tradition, even with all of the emphasis on the spirit. Okay, so I want to read what you guys have said. Okay, Nikki says, my sister taught me about the times of day and the different characteristics of these time slots. Kayla says, for me, the difference is in a balance that I feel within. Yeah, that's my experience too. From yoga and from eating South Asian cuisine, learning about the cooking methods. Christine says, I don't have much experience other than reading a couple of books, a blog. I do practice yoga, but not regularly. You practice pretty regularly, Christine. You're getting there. And Kayla says, about 3 years ago, I learned that if I did just a little bit of yoga in my tiny space, I felt that it was working. I was working on my mind and body at the same time, which helped me a lot. Yeah. So there's this unitive quality of this practice. So part of the experience for me with Ayurveda has been an invitation to come back to my senses. And someone was telling me about this, I think it was last week. You know, we get confusion between the words sensual and sensuous. That the word sensuous denotes experiences that are of the senses as opposed to those that are of the mind. And sensual has kind of a sexual overtone to it. Sensuous just means of the senses. And I think that if we can only take a couple of things from Ayurveda, a return to a sensuous approach to healing is one of the best things that we could possibly do. So very traditionally, one of the hallmarks of Ayurvedic practice is a series of rituals or routines for cleansing and purifying the body. And this would include, cleaning the mouth, emptying the bowels, the way that you eat and drink, to keep the body clear and light and free, and working as well as it can. And there are practices that are done for sort of maintenance, and then others that are done perhaps more intensely during times when healing is needed. And then similarly, there are tonification or rejuvenative practices when people are depleted. If you're interested in this, there are lots and lots of good resources and ways that you can learn about some of these things. But what I want to do today is share a couple of the Ayurvedic practices that I use most often with my clients. And then I want to talk about how this sensuous approach to healing helped me to start to grasp this very strange idea for our scientifically trained minds of constitutions and energetics and the doshas. And I want to see if I can help impart that a little bit, that maybe you can come away from this with a little bit of a sense of the doshas and a couple of practices to incorporate in your life as well. Okay. So the first thing I want you to think about is I want you to think about what happens to you when you travel on an airplane. I want you to think of the most unpleasant airplane flight that you've had, and what happens to your physical body, to your senses. What is your sensuous experience of flying on an airplane? Tell me about that. The ways that flying in an airplane puts you out of balance. And if you've never felt out of balance from flying on an airplane, then I want you to tell me how you get out of balance if you eat a ton of heavy food and sit on the couch for a week, like eating heavy stuff and sitting on the couch. And one of those two things I'm pretty willing to bet that you have experienced. If not, there is a third option, but I think that's going to cover most of you. Okay, Kayla says, I swell up. My stomach does cartwheels and I feel bloated. What else? Think about what happens to your skin, what happens to your mental state. You're on a long, unpleasant flight. Nikki said, the bad flight for me is when I'm really tired from before and have eaten badly the days before and my body tries to balance, but I can't because of the plane. Christine says, lack of airflow, the vacuum-like environment ringing in my ears. Can't smell, feels dry. Okay, yeah, we're getting there. It's interesting to note a little bit that even just talking about the sensuous part of the experience, I want you to look back at what you've written and see how much of it was focusing on what your senses were perceiving about your own bodily experience, and how much were you describing the outer environment of the plane or what happened before you got on the plane. And it's not that this is wrong, it's that it's showing you that it's a real challenge actually to do this and to practice this level of focus on the sensuous part of the experience. Kayla says, I usually get too cold. Christine says, cramped, of course, because I'm 6 foot tall. Yeah, I bet you are cramped. I'm only 5'4" and I feel cramped. Okay, so the experience of going up in a plane is gives us a window into what Ayurveda describes as the Vata Dosha. Now, this word dosha is very important to define properly in order to understand what we're talking about here. So dosha does not mean type of person. It does not mean constitutional type. It means fault, or the way that I expand on that definition is to say tendency to go out of balance in a particular way. So all of the physical, the manifest physical world is seen as being made up of these 3 different qualities, which are tendencies to go out of balance. So everything, part of what I think is beautiful about this is, and there are deeper layers to this that are cosmological and that are deeper. We're just going to stay on the level of the dosha, which is kind of the closest, most observable level. Inherent in this idea of the 3 doshas is that while working together, they create everything, but each one on its own is defined by its tendency to go out of balance, or its tendency to have a fault, its tendency to be incomplete or wrong in some way. And this reminds me of the idea that comes from the Jewish tradition of the idea that the work of creation is unfinished, and that there is a need for the human beings to continue going on and tending and healing the world and offering remedy and balance. So, and partly this tendency for things to go out of balance is also what creates movement and change and dynamism. It means that things don't stay the same. They're going out of balance, and then they're compensating, and they're shifting and changing all the time. So when you go up in an airplane, you are not grounded, you're at a very high altitude. It is very dry up there. It's very cold up there. Most people tend to get constipated after, when they fly too long, dehydrated. You might get headaches. You might feel alternately kind of sleepy or unfocused, or you might feel antsy, like, you want to move around. Staying stuck in your seat isn't necessarily Vata dosha. That's a little bit more just the specifics of being on an airplane. Vata has to do with movement. But of course, even though you're sitting still in the plane, you are actually moving very, very fast. The plane is carrying you at a very high speed. So Vata is the tendency to go out of balance in a way that is dry, in a way that is light, in a way that is cold, in a way that has to do with the nervous system, in a way that has to do with creativity or spiritual heights, or, like flight of ideas. Kayla, tell me if I'm forgetting anything, or any of you. I think that sums it up pretty well. So I want you to think about your own experience of this. Do you know anybody, or maybe you recognize yourself as a person like this? Somebody who is very sensitive to the cold, tendency to go out of balance in a way that is cold. Very dry skin, really bothered by the winter, especially dry winter. The Vata body will tend to be thin and long, and irregular. So, like uneven lengths of fingers, very knotty joints. Vata can live in the joints. So people who are Vata can tend to be people who are hypermobile and have joint problems. Vata people will tend to be very sensitive, really like feel a lot, and they'll tend to also be very creative, but they'll have a hard time sometimes with being consistent or with staying grounded and practical. They might have trouble with motivation, but they can become very inspired and very creative, very connected to those kinds of ideas. They might have difficulty getting along in the world sometimes, because they're so sensitive, and their bodies are a little bit more fragile. Tell me if you feel like and they'll often be artistic, or creative in some way. Tell me, is this ringing a bell for anyone that you or someone that you've met seems to really embody like this particular way of being prone to going out of balance? And of course, there are gifts with this too, but it's really defined by the way that we go out of balance. Nikki says yes. Now, one of the things about Vata is because it is the most, now everyone, all of us, and everything in the world is constituted of all of the doshas. So everyone will have some of all of these things. And Vata, because of its nature, goes out of balance more easily than any of the other doshas. So this is why even people who really are not Vata at all, I am really not Vata in my constitution, even people who are not will, when you go on a long enough plane ride without enough, self-care, will go out of balance in a Vata way. And Vata is the easiest thing to go out of balance. So this will tend to happen to people pretty easily, even if it's not strongly your constitution. Christine, I do think that you fit this. I think that you might be a combination of Vata and Pitta, I think. We'll see what you think. When you might be a little more Vata than Pitta, but I think you are a blend. We'll see what you think when we get there to Pitta, this next one. Okay, so now let's talk about the second one. So now I want you to think about, let's see. I want you to think about what happens when you watch something on TV that gets you really riled up emotionally and intellectually, like gets you hot inside. Like for me, this would be watching a lot of the current unfolding political happenings in the United States. For some people, this would be like watching the rival sports team win like over your hometown favorite in a particularly dirty way, you know. Something where it's like gonna get you riled up and there's a sense of like wanting to fight, like you want to fight a little bit. That might be intellectually or you know, otherwise. If you did that and you ate a bunch of spicy food and you were outside all afternoon in the heat, and you kind of had, you know, like you got overheated, and the food was spicy and also greasy. Tell me what that would feel like to you. Let's focus on the sensuous aspects of this. Have you ever done this? I imagine that that a lot of you guys, this isn't really like your idea of a good time, but I'm wondering if you how you could relate to this. Truthfully, the way that I relate to it, and I definitely have a lot of this dosha in me, is that I get really involved in ideas and intellectual arguments. Like I love a good debate. Like I love a good debate, and I don't have to be. I'm not necessarily personally upset, but I like to be kind of riled up that way. I'm competitive. I like to compete. I like to win. I like to achieve stuff. That sort of thing. I do like to eat spicy food, maybe not as much as I used to. Anything? What do you guys think? Or maybe you know somebody. My dad is like my go-to example of this. Maybe you know somebody who is a really like warm and gregarious person who loves spicy food and like drinking beer and watching sports and like laughing and having a great time with people, and can kind of like go at, you know, can kind of like go for a long time, strong, a lot of endurance. Kayla says, I think I would feel heat rising from the pit of my stomach to my face and cheeks. But if I add the spicy food and hot midday day, which I would avoid at all costs, I might lose it and have to retreat. Yeah. Nikki says, oh, I would feel heavy and slow and would just want to drink a lot of ice water and read or watch something funny. The sensations are overwhelm and despair, and I would want to move away from that. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, okay. Christine says, I would get gas and bloat. Yeah. So these are some manifestations of excess Pitta energy. So Pitta is the tendency to go out of balance in a way that is hot, oily, strong. What else? Muscular. Um, and outgoing, kind of outgoing, and also of the mind. Like Pitta also really is where Vata is connected with the spirit, Pitta is the mind, and the intellect. So, and that capacity to focus. So these are really great, you guys. Your sensuousness has improved a lot from the first exercise to this one. So heat rising from the stomach, the seat of Pitta is in the stomach, kind of rising up to the face and cheeks. A lot of times when you see someone with a Pitta imbalance, they will be flushed physically. And then losing it and having to retreat reveals a little bit of your own constitution, Kayla, because a true Pitta person would be like decompressing more by like continuing on with what they were already doing. Wanting to drink a lot of ice water is definitely a symptom of excess Pitta that Nikki was saying. And then the gas and bloating there is a Vata way of doing that, but the kind of a very stinky, smelly, greasy way of that happening is more Pitta, with like looser stool, where the Vata would be constipation. Okay, good job, you guys, good job. So the gifts of Pitta are very emphasized and appreciated in American culture. The U.S. is a Pitta country in pretty much every way. So there's this sense of like the emphasis on achievement and on entrepreneurial effort and creating new things and pushing ahead. Even like the idea of sort of all American sports kinds of thing, like athleticism is very Pitta. American, I don't know, like the 4th of July barbecue is, sort of a Pitta image to me. So the advantages, if the advantages of Vata have to do with sensitivity and creativity and connection to spirit, the advantages of Pitta have to do with focus, concentration, the ability and the strength to persevere and do a lot, really get a lot done, both mentally and physically. And sort of a natural athleticism can be part of Pitta as well. Okay. And so then let's think about how you would go out of balance if you were to just treat yourself with so much gentleness that you put on your gorgeous like silk pajamas and you brushed your hair 100 times and you ate, what would you eat for breakfast? A whole avocado and a piece of toast with coconut oil on it and maple syrup on top of that, and like maybe just like 2 bonbons. And then you laid on the couch and you listened to the most beautiful music and just relaxed. And then for lunch you ate, I don't know, some like a coconut milk curry and but very mild, not too spicy. And then you had ice cream for dessert. And then you brushed your hair another 100 times. And then maybe you stretch a little bit, but then you just go to bed and take a nap. And then you get up and you eat a beautifully prepared, just gourmet, like 6 or 7 course dinner with wine perfectly paired, um, and um, and you still are wearing your silk pajamas, and then a number of your closest friends come over and just sit with you and talk in the evening through the evening, and you are providing emotional support to them, and then you go to bed, and then you get up and you do this again for I mean, this depends on how depleted you are, because for some of you this would actually be a very good therapeutic day. For the people who are out of balance in a Vata way, this would be therapy for you. But I want you to imagine that you did this for twice as long as would be advised. And that will be different for everyone. Twice as long as would be advised. So, way beyond the point of restoring yourself from depletion into overindulgent stagnation. And how would you feel at the end of that time? Twice as much of this as you needed. Focusing again on the sensuous aspects of this. Oh, you guys did so fabulously with Pitta. Yeah, good. Okay. Okay, keep going. Keep going. Kayla says, slow, stuck, heavy, slow mind. Like a song slowed down. Oh, yeah, that's good. Like a song slowed down. I love it. Christine says, I would feel heavy, tired, and slow. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Guilty. Oh, Christine, that's such a good one. Yeah, that's so part of this. Yes. Mm-hmm. Nikki says, like going numb all over. Yes. You guys, this is great. Fabulous. Okay. So, this is a description of the Kapha dosha. And this one, I think, is often the hardest for Westerners to grasp, because, frankly, the cultural bias that was present at the time that the doshas were being described and the cultural bias that we have now are totally different. And Kapha, part of the reason I described it as I did, is that Kapha is associated with heavier, more substantial bodies. And because of the cultural bias in the West toward thinness, this, a preference for a Vata type body, and then increasingly for Pitta type bodies, athletic bodies. But there's been a continual shunning and fear and even revulsion for heavier, rounder Kapha type bodies for a long time. And in fact, the Kapha dosha in the original texts is described as being the one that exemplifies beauty and is associated with compassion and nurturing and evenness, regular, even, beautiful skin and hair, round, ample body shape, this sort of thing. And it's also the tendency to go out of balance in a way that is slow, heavy, oily, also cold, like Vata. Um, and the thing about the Kapha dosha, though, is that of all three, it is the one that is most resilient. It's the least likely to go out of balance. So Kapha is like the anchor. And it's not that it can't go out of balance, it does. And we all, I think, have had experiences, maybe during the winter, or, you have experiences of overindulgence or too much sitting around, or perhaps too much nurturing of other people, or too much self-indulgence. And not enough effort. We almost all experience that at some point and can go out of balance in that direction. But one of the lessons that I think has been so helpful for me from Ayurveda, I am constitutionally a mix of Pitta and Kapha. And for a lot of my life, I really, I wouldn't have had this language, but my Kapha self, my Kapha tendencies, I have very broad hips, I've come to appreciate them, but for a long time, that was there's like a 10-inch difference between my waist and my hips, and that was pretty tough for me for a period of time, But I have come to now understand that a big part of what I offer people through my work is kind of like I was starting to do as I was telling you that, okay, imagine this. A lot of times what I do is I kind of take some of this Kapha energy and I just kind of massage it in for my clients, okay, let's just ground and nurture and calm, and feel good. And it's very helpful. It's very, very helpful. And this understanding of Ayurveda has helped me to recognize and see the beauty in that, and the resilience in that I don't have to wish that I could be more Vata than I am, and I don't have to overemphasize my Pitta self. That actually my Kapha part is the most stable, grounded place. I do have to balance it. I can easily, like most Kapha people, if I get in a rut, I will really stay in a rut. There's a momentum, and actually I have a client who uses this term. She talks about couch inertia, that she'll get into a phase of kind of just coming home after work and getting on the couch and not going out and doing things or seeking out social opportunities because this couch inertia sort of pulls her in. And so that is a great picture of how when Kapha goes out of balance, it can feel like that. Christine says, Kapha is like the tortoise and the hare. Exactly. Yes, it is. In fact, the Pitta, Vata people will be the fastest, but they'll burn out very quickly. So Vata people could sprint potentially, or do something very quickly, but endurance will be harder for them. Pitta will confer more muscular strength and power, and more endurance than Vata, but still, not quite as speedy as Vata at its fastest, but, somewhere in the middle. And then Kapha is not going to be fast, is going to be pretty strong, maybe not necessarily like a power lifter, but it's pretty strong. And Kapha has the most endurance. And that is true both emotionally and physically. There's sort of if Vata's mental power is inspiration and creativity, Pitta's is concentration, focus, And kaphas is patience, nurturing, compassion. So, we need all of them. Okay. So, yes, okay, good. Questions and feedback. Let's do this. Tell me sort of where you're locating yourself on this if you want, and kind of what your sense is here. What doesn't make sense. And then this is great. Like if you're Christine's thing of like the kapha is like the tortoise and the hare. Yes, exactly. The hare is a total pitta. A total pitta. This is also really fun to do. If you enjoy cartoons at all, this is really a very great place to start testing out your sense of whether you're learning the 5 elements in Chinese medicine theory, or you're learning the doshas. When you go to something as broadly drawn as a cartoon, that sort of plays with some of these universal archetypes, it'll remove some of the complexity enough so that you can start to see some of these tendencies, and it's pretty fun. So, I'm thinking one of my favorite cartoons when I was a kid was Pinky and the Brain, and like the brain is like this little pitta, but this sort of like, I don't know, pitta mind, and Pinky is like total Vata situation, like spaced out. Okay. Kayla says, when I first learned about this, I thought I had Kapha Pitta, but recently it was brought to my attention that I was more Vata Pitta. Sometimes it's hard for me to decide. Yes, I think you're more Vata Pitta. That's also my sense. This can be challenging because sometimes we can have an imbalance that's not the same as our constitution inherently. So you want to look at yourself over the course of your whole life, particularly look at yourself at your best, when you're healthiest and happiest. That's going to give you the best sense of your constitution. Nikki says, I also did a quiz a few months ago and am Vata Pitta. I think it's really accurate. I've been feeling some kapha recently, and that's been nice too, especially at kapha times of day. Yes. Christine, also Pitta Vata. I notice when I get into stressful situations, I get animated and my heart races. I think in that way my Vata goes out of balance. Yeah. Yes. Okay. So you guys are starting to go there with this already, but this is part of what is so great about starting to look at the doshas and thinking about constitution from an Ayurvedic perspective before you go to the Chinese medicine theory to do this. This three is very workable for the Western mind. There's something easier about 3 than 5 in terms of getting ourselves into this understanding. And then intuitively, we can see the connection that part of balancing these imbalances is to draw upon the energy that's missing, or the energy that's opposite or contrasting to the one that is in excess. So I think that you guys are starting to kind of talk about this a little bit. So Nikki, I think I'm not sure what you're asking here. Is there a difference between a Vata style indulgence and a Kapha style indulgence? So how a Vata would how a Vata could indulge their tendencies in a way that would feel good temporarily, but then get them more out of balance? Is that kind of what you're asking? I want to make sure. Because there is a phenomenon, and this, sometimes there are things that I feel like I get to experience because I work with so many people doing this stuff. And you guys tell me stuff that you don't tell everybody in your life, which, is always an honor on a very deep level. And also practically, gives me a very privileged position in terms of seeing things about how most of us are operating that we often don't admit to each other, we don't tell everybody. But I can sort of see that happening. And so one of the things that becomes very apparent to someone like me, um, even though I read this first in books, but now I have seen it enough times to know that it's true, is that one of the things we do as humans is we tend to, like, when we're going out of balance or we're starting to spin a little, the most natural thing for us to do is to, like, go harder at the very thing that is getting us out of balance in the first place. It's almost like we're gonna, like, double down on our dosha at that moment. So when a Vata person is going to try ill-advised Vata strategies to feel better or to kind of get over whatever's bothering them, the number one thing that Vata people seem to want to do is fast, juice fast, eat less, eat lighter, cleanse, something like that. The Vatas are like, when the Vata is stressed, it feels I think it feels to them, I can't say from firsthand experience, it feels to them like they would just rather kind of leave their bodies just like right up through this chimney of their head and float away from all the stuff that's bothering them. And so, I mean, sometimes it's a little bit more of a Pitta thing to do that with drugs and alcohol, but it's really a Vata thing to do that with, like, breathing exercises, spirituality that's escapist in nature, getting lost in their thoughts and fantasies and visions, fasting, cleansing, doing, 40 days of hot yoga of something, that kind of thing. Drug use, it can be Vata, but it's really, but that would be, the Vata drugs would be ones that tend to actually not be addicting. Vata-ish drugs would be more like the psychedelics. It wouldn't be so much sedatives and stimulants. That's a very Pitta thing. But definitely dreams and daydreams and breath and manipulating food and kind of like that way of kind of floating up and out. Home cooked meals and comfort food is definitely a Kapha way. Yes. Yes. The Pitta way to go out of balance more, what Pittas will tend to do is, like, very much classic, like, type A workaholic kinds of behaviors. So, like, doubling down on longer hours, working harder, doing more, pushing further, exercise addiction. And then the flip side of that, which can be that it's hard for them to turn off. So they can very frequently then turn to drugs, alcohol, using food in a drug-like way. And that sort of thing. Any kind of addiction, like sex addiction, gambling addiction, that addictive quality that's very strongly Pitta, like kind of grabbing on, attached, that sort of thing. With Kapha, even when there is an element of, chronic overeating or food addiction, it's much more about the sensual pleasure, comfort, nurturing, sharing food with others, and the beauty, there's a beauty to it for Kapha that's not necessarily part of it for Pitta. Pitta is like kind of get the job done. Kapha is about the whole journey and experience. And there can, there can be, of course, like anybody of any dosha can experience any one of these things, but the tendency for kaphas is going to be more like, oh, I need to rest more. I really just need to slow down. I need to spend some time cooking or taking care of my family. I need to go to a really nice meal or treat myself. That sort of thing would be more kapha-like. Um, yeah. Okay. So I haven't really covered the practices, but I think, in fact, I can just mention one, and then we can brainstorm together. Maybe what do you feel like you could learn or sort of draw from the other doshas, these other tendencies, like that? What could you steal from some of these, other ways of being that could help to balance the ways that you inherently are going out of balance or that you're likely to? Um, I think that might be useful. So, what do you guys think? What are some things that you naturally do or that you imagine doing that you think might help to balance you? And then let's see if we can. Let's start for other people first, because you guys are all Vata Pittas, um, which is kind of hilarious. So what do you think, like, what might be some good medicine for kapha imbalance, do you think? And any thoughts of how you could make this appealing to a kapha really stuck in that mode? Um, this is, I think, the really sophisticated work of helping support healing, is like finding the path of least resistance to the thing that person needs. Um, because very often it will feel like such a big gap between the thing you want to reach for that actually just entrenches you more into the challenge, and the thing that you need but that really feels uncomfortable and far away. So we have to find a way to make it. How could you dress it in like just enough of the rasa, the flavor of kapha, um, to make it kind of slide down a little more easily? Oh, I love this. Kayla, yes, travel might be good medicine for kapha. You could delight them with new, beautiful materials they will encounter in a new place. Yes, I love that. I love that. Um, mhm. Maybe walks with beauty involved, walk through a beautiful park. Yes, yes, I love it. Um, Adding this element of beauty and then starting with walking rather than like, go running for 20 minutes or something. Yes, yes. Um, One of my favorite kapha icons is the British food writer and host Nigella Lawson, who I've had a major girl crush on for probably as long as I've known that she existed. And she really exemplifies like the kapha body type. She has the thick, lustrous hair and dark eyes, and is very curvy. And even the way she like talks about food is very kapha-y. And when she writes about food that's like lighter, that's actually more vata type, vata or pitta type food. I remember in one of her books she writes about like when I know I have to eat lighter, I hate it so much, but I trick myself into liking it by telling myself about all of the beautiful things that I'm going to eat and going to the store and buying things to eat. And it's all part of this like lighter paradigm that's based on actually much more like Asian style cuisine. But she's approaching it in a way that appeals to her strength of beauty and food and nurturing. Yeah. Maybe a picnic lunch in nature with lighter food, still very sensuous. Yes, beautiful, beautiful. Okay. All right. What about for pitta? What do you think? How are you going to get type A, worked up Pitta to calm down and slow down? I'm sorry if you guys are hearing either Charlotte snoring or the car horn outside of my window. Massage. Oh, that's a good one. That's a really good one. Yes. Um, yeah, and pittas are gonna be like the ones who like want like deep tissue massage, like get in there and like intense. And so you might need to kind of get them to take some amount of the deeper work, and then I would do this a lot for the pitta people in my body work practice. Give them some of that, and then like 10 minutes of craniosacral work at the end, calm them down. Hatha yoga, maybe sell them on the physical, but it can be a mind-body class. Yeah, right. The hatha practice that would be better for pittas would involve more seated poses. Like the kaphas, all the kaphas want to do is like we want to go to like restorative class and like lie there on props. So we want to stretch really deeply, and really we need a flow, the flow. The pittas want to do vinyasas all day, and they need to sit in a sitting pose, and they need, so yes, exactly, a hatha yoga with some amount of physical, but then giving them some deeper, more grounded poses. Yes. And then also some breath work to bring in the vata as well, to lighten up, some of that heavy, oily. Yeah. Any other ideas for pitta? Type A. Some of it can be in the framing. So sometimes with pitta people, they're not going to be as motivated. The Vata will be very motivated by, like spiritual union and transcendence and big, meaningful ideas and things. And Kapha will be very motivated by love and nurturing, care for the self and the people they love. If a Kapha person is not motivated to exercise, but they come to have a health problem that could affect their ability to spend time with their family, that will work for Kapha. For a Pitta person, the sense that they're going to, actually, one of you has recently gone through this. For a Pitta person, the sense that they have an injury that is going to, if they don't take care of it, it's going to make it harder for them to do the things they want to do in the future, that will get Pitta's attention. So if Pitta needs to be convinced to pace, to slow down, to rest for a period of time, an appeal to their ability over the long term to have a long productive career, or to have a long time of enjoying their physical vitality, rather than like burning out and not being able to do the things that they enjoy again, or burning out and not being able to continue working, or like being forced to retire. That will get Pitta's attention if they think they're going to lose their ability to achieve and to learn and to do that sort of thing. Okay, what about Vata? I think we've covered this, but since you guys are Vata Pittas, we want to make sure we like fully cover this here. So Pitta is kind of like, it needs a little bit of both. Pitta needs a little bit of the calming, grounding, resting, nurturing of Kapha, and the lightness and the creative, spiritual opening of Vata. Nikki says, maybe Pitta can make a graph or a chart where they connect with how they want to feel and what they could do to feel that way. Maybe state indicators. I like that. Pitta likes charts and graphs and progress. It's really good, yes. and sort of turning it into a goal, turning it into something that they can achieve. I mean, you have to be a little careful with this sometimes, because then it can become a reinstantiation of all of the stuff that they're doing that's wearing them out. But yeah, that's a really good idea. You guys you're doing great with this. Yes. Okay. What else? Anything else for Pitta, or we can also just start moving on to Vata? Grounding foods. Maybe the creativity of cooking could bring them in. Yes. Uh-huh. That I think is right for Vata. Grounding foods and engaging with the creative aspect of cooking. Yes. Absolutely. Maybe a painting or ceramic class for Vata grounding. Yeah, I like ceramics especially for Vata. Yes. Mm-hmm. I think painting would be good too. But a heavier medium, oils or, something like that. For Vata, maybe it would be good to buy food at a farmer's market, be part of the process. Yes, that could be good. I think you have to be a fairly healthy Vata to be able to do that, because the Vata, the truly, it, in a lot of the Ayurvedic texts, when the doshas go out of balance, they use the word deranged. So I almost just said the truly deranged Vata experience, which is correct, but it's no more deranged Vata than deranged Pitta or deranged Kapha. So I don't want to seem like I'm picking on the Vatas, but it is sort of it has a certain connotation in English. Yeah, but like the truly deranged Vata experience is of having a very difficult time making decisions. Vata and Kapha can both struggle with decision making. Pitta is decisive. So if you are in a real deranged Vata situation, you need to have your number of options greatly reduced and simplified, so as not to have decision fatigue. So so the farmer's market would be good for a Vata who's in a pretty good state of health, but too many options of any kind, any amount of shopping can really tire out the Vata or derange it. It's partly why Kaphas love shopping, because then they're considering all the options. It's sort of, yeah. And Pittas can shop so fast, get in and get out, get it done. So the whole spiel that I gave back a few minutes ago, maybe some minutes ago, when we were talking about what it would be like to go out of balance in a kapha way, that's Vata therapy. A really good strategy for Vata people is to make friends with somebody who is a very kapha-y person. The kapha energy will, also because kaphas are very nurturing in general, the kapha energy will kind of rub off on the Vata person, also because the Vata is very sensitive, that is a really good pair. Vata and Kapha are very, very good for each other in relationships and friendships and partnerships, in business relationships. So another way of doing this is to engage with other people or animals who have a dosha that you don't have. So even a really kapha-y dog, for a Vata person can help. Maybe reading poetry or fiction would be good for Vata. Nikki, you're exemplifying a little bit the attraction to the things that that could unbalance the Vata a little bit more, which is very sweet. I experience you as being a very balanced Vata Pitta, so it's a little bit funny to me that this is happening. So the reading and the imagination I mean, it would be good if there's a lot of anxiety. The Vata flying up can be an anxiety kind of thing. However, it's still very mental and very imaginative. So we want to bring Vata down into the body. So here is the practice actually that I was going to give you, and then we'll wrap up soon because we're going along. Christine says, my roommate in college is a kapha. We lived together for 4 years. Yeah, and I bet it worked great, I bet. That's awesome. Yeah, so one thing that can be really helpful for Vata is this practice of abhyanga, or sesame oil massage. Oh, my internet is slowing down, it looks like. Okay, I think maybe we're back. Okay, so the okay, good. I'm glad. So this is a really good just self-care practice. It's not going to hurt if you're pretty kapha dominant, especially in the especially like in the winter months when everybody's vata tends to get a little deranged, even if you are a kapha, a pitta kapha kind of person. So what you want to do is warm up some unrefined sesame oil. And the best way of doing this is like get a bowl of hot water, a little teeny, 1 ounce container for the sesame oil, drop that container into the container of hot water, and let it warm up that way. And then I do this a slightly different way than the traditional way that I've adapted that seems to work well for me. I do not work the oil into my hair, which would be traditional and would be ideal. But I do work it into the rest of my body. So I take my shower just normally like I would. And then after I get out of the shower, I massage that warmed oil, working from my fingertips and my toes toward the heart. Massage it in, and as much as you can, ideally you want to use a full ounce of oil, but try to get it to really absorb into the skin. So you may not be able to get up to that full ounce, but if you're really dry, you might actually be able to. And the oil helps to actually ground the vata energy and seal it in so that it doesn't kind of evaporate out. And then this ritual of connecting with the body, grounding, being present with the physical body, not floating up into your head, is very, very helpful. So this is what I would recommend for all of you guys. And if you are going to travel, if you're doing air travel, doing abhyanga before you get on the plane is very, very helpful. Again, to sort of lock in that vata energy so it doesn't go all over the place as you're flying. So it looks like the internet is getting a little slow and cranky. And we've been here for a while. So I'm going to go ahead and say good night. It's so good to be back with you guys. And then I need to figure out what I'm going to do since we missed a class, the Western Herbalism class. So I'm going to rethink like whether we'll just add a class 1 week or how we'll go. But we will continue on next week, and we're moving into the month of the Wounded Healer. And I'm excited. I'm really excited most of all about this. But we are going to have this Western Herbs class to pick up on our way. So I don't know if you guys have gotten any of this, but we'll figure it out. So if not, if you're confused, just look for an email or type a comment below, and I'll come back and fill in whatever is missing after we close. So thank you all so much, and welcome to my new house. And I'll probably be playing a little bit with where I want to sit to talk to you and do these classes in the future. Okay. It keeps breaking up, so I'm going to go now, even though I could probably keep talking to you for a long time. So good night, good night. Have a beautiful week, and we'll be back soon with Western herbs and then with Wounded Healer month. Okay, good night.